Imagine you're sitting around a fire. Not last weekend. Not a few thousand years ago. Imagine it's 100,000 years ago. The night is freezing. Your stomach is empty. Somewhere beyond the glow of the fire, a giant predator is moving through the darkness. You see it. Your friend doesn't. You need to warn him. You open your mouth, and nothing. No words. No sentences. No run. No danger. No something is watching us. Just silence. It sounds impossible, but there was a time when humans may not have possessed anything resembling modern language. And that's where today's mystery begins. How did we go from silent primates wandering the African savanna to a species capable of creating poetry, politics, podcasts, philosophy, and YouTube comments? The answer takes us on a journey stretching hundreds of thousands of years into the past. And the truth is far stranger than you think. When archaeologists want to study the past, they look for evidence. Bones, tools, weapons, jewelry, cave paintings. But language creates a unique problem. Because words don't fossilize. Scientists can excavate a 50,000-year-old spear. They can analyze ancient DNA. They can reconstruct entire prehistoric environments. But they cannot dig up a conversation. Language disappears the moment it's spoken. So how do researchers investigate something that left almost no physical evidence? The answer is surprisingly creative. They examine skulls. They study ancient throat anatomy. They analyze genetic mutations. They compare human brains with animal brains. And they search for clues hidden in archaeological discoveries across Africa, Europe, and Asia. Researchers from institutions like Harvard University, the University of Oxford, and the Max Planck Institute have spent decades trying to answer one simple question. When did humans start talking? And nobody agrees. Here's where things get interesting. Humans aren't the only creatures that communicate. Bees perform dances that tell other bees where flowers are located. Dolphins use unique whistles that function almost like names. Chimpanzees have alarm calls that warn each other about danger. So if animals communicate, what makes human language different? The answer is symbols. A signal is direct. A dog growls because it's threatened. The growl is connected to the emotion. But a symbol is completely different. Take the word danger. There's nothing dangerous about the sound itself. Human beings simply agreed that those specific sounds would represent a particular idea. Think about that for a second. Every word you've ever spoken is essentially a shared hallucination. Millions of people hear the same sounds and instantly understand the same meaning. That leap from signal to symbol may have been one of the most important moments in evolutionary history. And the real question is, when did that happen? Scientists are divided into two major camps. The first group believes language evolved gradually. According to this idea, communication slowly became more sophisticated over hundreds of thousands of years. Simple calls became more complex. Complex calls became primitive symbols. Primitive symbols eventually became language. The second group has a much more dramatic theory. They believe language appeared suddenly, maybe around 100,000 to 50,000 years ago. Maybe a genetic mutation changed the brain. Maybe human intelligence crossed a critical threshold. Maybe something extraordinary happened. And suddenly our ancestors could think in layers. Ideas inside ideas. Sentences inside sentences. Stories inside stories. If that's true, language didn't evolve. It erupted. And honestly, both theories have evidence supporting them, which means the truth may lie somewhere in the middle. Before humans could speak, our bodies had to change. One of the most important changes involved the larynx, your voice box. Chimpanzees have a high larynx. It's efficient. It allows them to breathe and swallow safely. Humans are different. Our larynx sits lower in the throat. That creates a larger vocal chamber and allows us to produce a huge range of sounds. Without that change, speech as we know it wouldn't exist. But evolution charged a price, because lowering the larynx also increased the risk of choking. In other words, evolution looked at language and basically said, yes, speaking is worth occasionally dying because a sandwich went down the wrong pipe. Not exactly ideal, but apparently worth it. In 1989, archaeologists made an incredible discovery. Inside Kibra Cave in Israel, they found a tiny bone called the hyoid. The bone belonged to a Neanderthal who lived roughly 60,000 years ago. Now, this might not sound exciting, but here's why scientists cared. The hyoid helps support the muscles involved in speech. When researchers examined it, they discovered something astonishing. It looked almost identical to a modern human hyoid. That meant Neanderthals may have been physically capable of speaking. But then genetics entered the story, and things became even stranger. In 2002, scientists identified a gene called FXB2. The media immediately labeled it the language gene. That's not entirely accurate, but it is important. People with damaged versions of FXB2 often struggle with speech and grammar. The gene plays a major role in coordinating the complex movements required for talking. Here's the shocking part. When researchers extracted Neanderthal DNA and analyzed FXB2, they discovered Neanderthals possessed the same key mutations found in modern humans, which means both species likely inherited those mutations from a common ancestor over 400,000 years ago. So by that point, the machinery for speech may already have existed. But that still leaves one giant question unanswered. What were the first words? This is where science becomes surprisingly funny. Researchers have proposed several theories. The bow wow theory suggests humans copied sounds from nature. Thunder, birds, animals. The poo-poo theory argues language evolved from emotional sounds like laughter, cries, and pain. Yes, that's really its scientific name. Then there's the yo-hi-ho theory. According to this idea, rhythmic sounds made during teamwork slowly evolved into language. Think ancient workers lifting massive objects together. And finally, there's the gesture hypothesis. This theory suggests language may have started with hand movements, not voices, hands. Interestingly, babies point before they talk, and brain regions responsible for language are closely connected to regions controlling hand movements. Maybe speech began with gestures. Maybe our mouths simply caught up later. Here's something many people overlook. Language isn't just about anatomy. It's about psychology, human psychology, maybe even social psychology. To use language, you must understand that other people have minds, thoughts, beliefs, intentions. Researchers call this theory of mind, and it may be one of the most important abilities humans ever evolved. Because when I speak, I'm assuming you can understand what I mean, and you're assuming I intended to communicate something meaningful. That's incredibly sophisticated. Evolutionary psychologist Robin Dunbar proposed that language evolved because growing human groups became too large for traditional social bonding. Chimpanzees groom each other. Humans gossip. And strangely enough, gossip may have helped build civilization. Around 70,000 years ago, something extraordinary happened. Archaeological sites suddenly reveal evidence of art, jewelry, complex tools, musical instruments, long-distance trade networks. Stories may have become possible. Knowledge could finally accumulate. Instead of each generation starting from scratch, information could be passed forward. Human culture began evolving faster than biology, and civilization was born. So what was humanity's first word? Nobody knows. Maybe it was a warning, maybe a name, maybe food, maybe look, maybe something we'll never even imagine. But whatever that first word was, it changed the future forever. Because the moment one human successfully shared an idea with another, something incredible happened. Two separate minds became connected, and every story, every book, every song, every scientific discovery, every argument, every joke, and every YouTube video traces back to that first conversation around a prehistoric fire. The real question isn't when humans started speaking. The real question is, what impossible future became possible the moment they did?